G'day, I'm Chris. We're working today, actually for a few more weeks. I think we're going to be working on this project. So this is my baby. It's a 1976 LE Coupe. Some call them an Arrow, some call them a Coupe. I don't know, I don't really care. It's just beautiful. I've had it for almost 20 years. Took it in for a roadworthy a couple of weeks ago and it failed. Mainly because the front suspension was completely kaput. All of the bushes have gone, tie rod ends are fucked, the discs are rooted, so yeah, I've had to sort of get all these new parts off eBay and stuff like that to try and get it fixed up. As you can see, everything at the moment is just up on these stands. I've had to jack the car up, get the wheels off, and then if we get in here, at the moment I'm sort of documenting what's happening. We've got very, very scratched and scored up discs here, so they've got to be replaced, and that's all fine. And then I've just taken off the front caliper, or the piston, the caliper, so that's off from its mount. I've got to get the mount off next. Unfortunately, these rubbers are looking a little perished up here. And I've got to dash down to the supermarket to grab some bags because I need to start labelling all of the nuts and bolts. But yeah, if you look down in here, like these bushes on the lower control arms, these old tie rods here, you can see that in there. Just really, really washed out, just busted. The suspension, the stabiliser bar here, this mount is basically all just broken off. So the whole thing's in a bit of a mess. So. And that doesn't include what's going on up here with the upper control arm bushes as well. I don't know if you can see those. But they got replaced about 20 years ago on this side, on the left-hand side of the car. So, so everything's coming out. I'm going to try and, I'm going to go too far because this car kind of needs a full-on nuts and bolts resto and I don't have the money to do it. But, whoops. So I'm just going to have to try and get this thing kind of roadworthy again so I can at least putt around in it from time to time. She's a bit tired. She's got a lot of rust that's been tried to be patched and filled before by the previous owner, in both sides, on both doors. A few dings here and there, and all the paintwork from this line down is all fresh, but everything up here above this line is brand new. Well, sorry, it's original. So a lot of chips. Original engine. I just fitted a couple of weeks ago this guy, which is an electronic dizzy, and also put a carby spacer in a while back. I've also managed to pick up an original manifold, inlet manifold. This one's a bit leaky around the water jacket here, around where the thermostat hits. So I'm going to replace all this as well. So I might include this in the series of videos. On the inside, most things work except for the clock. It'd be great to try and get that fixed up too at some point. So just take you for a quick look around. But generally speaking, for a car of this age, it's in pretty good nick. You can see here we've got some rust in the quarters at the bottom there, and some rust in the doors, and then a little bit more at the back there. And then on the inside, she's just a very, the original 8-track, 305,000 Ks on the clock. Everything's original. Some of these seats here, I need to get some covers. I've ordered some fabric from the US for, I've been able to pick up some of this houndstooth stuff in here. So, but I'm trying to source the velour. So, and also if I can get the vinyl, the carpets will take care of themselves. But if I can get the vinyl, then I can basically redo the whole thing, interior as well, one day. So at the moment I'm just sort of collecting parts and just fixing things as I need to. All right, so that's the journey up and now. You can see the scoring on this side. It's absolutely unbelievable how bad that is. So I'm going to try and sort all that out. But yeah, both sides are pretty much shot. So yeah, you can see the bushes up there. Maybe a lot of, I've got a leaky power steering unit down here. So the bottom of the power steering unit is occasionally leaking. So that's all got to get done. These tie rods are just rooted. Yeah, and so it's original, except for electronic dizzy and the carby spacer. Might do away with the carby spacer once once I've got the new manifold on. I'm hoping I won't need it at that point. But like steering arm down there, or the steering column arm, forgot what it's called. I've got new links down there. The box I'm going to send off to get rebuilt, and I think the pump's fine. It doesn't seem to be leaking anywhere. Checked all that. Yeah, that's it. So hopefully over the next few weeks we'll get this sucker back on the road, and that'll be exciting. Take it for a drive. Thanks for watching. Tom, I've just started to pull this apart. So I've got the caliper off. The longer bolt is on the top and the shorter bolt is on the bottom, in the back here. It's there. But what's also interesting too is that this line runs sort of inside the suspension to the actual caliper of the piston. So next step is to remove this here, which is the bracket for the caliper and the brake pads. So let's have a quick look at that. There should be a couple of bolts there. It's really straightforward. Once this guy's off, then we can remove this cap and take the disc. Hopefully the disc will just pop straight off. See how we go. Of course there's a nut in there. So this morning, I didn't get too far yesterday, but today I'm basically I've just popped the cap off the top of the spindle there, and I've got to get this castle nut off. So you can see it's got a little locking pin in there, like a circlip. So that's got to come off. I took off the caliper bracket yesterday, so this bad boy is ready to go. The caliper little pistons in here, some of this rubber seems alright on this side. It's looking a bit perished, but this side, yeah, it's pretty far gone, I think. I mean, they're still moving in and out, which is what you want. So, but yeah, that's not supposed to happen. So I'll order some more of these little rubbers, or maybe the Holden piston, I'm not sure yet. We'll see what I can get off eBay. Hopefully we can give everything a bit of a clean. I'll probably order some bulk part cleaning solution. I can just drop this in a bucket somewhere, and hopefully we can get these parts nice and clean. And if I get time and feel like it, I'll prime them up, maybe wire brush them a bit, and give them a bit of black paint, and maybe they'll look as good as new. We'll see how we get on. Anyway, I'll come back after I've managed to hopefully get that nut off, and obviously the circlip and nut, and then if I can get the disc off, that'd be great. And then we'll be dealing with some raw suspension parts, which would be kind of fun. It's hard to know where the car starts and where the dirt stops with this one. It's pretty freaking dirty. Okay, so managed to get the rotor off, no problem. It was quite easy to get the castle nut off, and well, the pin was a bit of a struggle, but it came out. And the bearings kind of, one popped and the other one stayed on the spindle. I managed to get it off and pop it back in. I'll probably get new bearings, I think, and just with my new fresh disc here. I've got one obviously for the other side. And so now the next step, I think, is to probably disconnect the steering arm here from the spindle. Well, disconnect it from the tie rod end, because I've got a new one of these and a new tie rod. So I'm going to take that off first, and then I'm not sure whether all this will just come off in one piece, and maybe I can clean up the whole lot later. I'm just going to leave that on for now if I can get away with it, and then tidy it all up a bit later on. And then after that, we've got to break this ball joint, which isn't going to be fun, and be really careful with the spring, because I've heard they love to pop out, which is not great when they're under a bit of tension. So anyway, we'll see how we go. Wish me some luck here. Now the tie rod end is off, I'm going to try and get the sway bar loosened, and then I'll take the whole sway bar off, and then I think I'll just take the whole steering system off on both sides, just take the whole lot out and try and rebuild it using all the parts that I've got, so we can get things nice and clean before we tackle the ball joint and that sort of stuff. Okay, sorry, I didn't realise that I wasn't actually filming getting the tie rod end off, but basically that was obviously sitting in the arm there like that, and I just had the castle nut on top there, and just unscrewed it so that it was flush, and then just gave it a whack with that guy. and it just popped straight down. Now what I want to do is try and get everything out, so that with these new parts, so I've got a new tie rod there, and there's the link there, the tie rod end, and I'm going to try and match that length and the way that everything's set up there with these guys, so that hopefully it doesn't need too much of a wheel alignment. So I'm still going to get a wheel alignment, but hopefully it won't be, you know, completely crazy when I'm trying to drive it to the wheel alignment place. And in the meantime, I've just been removing the sway bar, so that's pretty straightforward. Just took a nut off underneath, and then started loosening it, and it basically just popped out. That guy just popped straight out. The other thing I'll mention too is that at the moment they're the sway bar nuts, or bolts I should say, and that's the bottom of the sway bar, which is held on. It's just use a little rubber grommet. But basically what you can see here is that every single nut and bolt and everything that's coming out is going into the little bags, and you just got to take your time, guys, and label everything with your trusty pen, and make sure that you know what everything's for when it's time to put everything back together. I think some are pretty self-explanatory, so I don't worry about those too much. Okay, so I've just taken off the little steering arm there, and so I can get access to the castle nut on top of the ball joint. So that my next project is to remove that pin, and I'm going to put a jack underneath this, because when it breaks, it's going to break. And you know, it's all being held in by the shocker. So I'm not sure whether to do the top first or the bottom first, or maybe watch someone else's YouTube vid and see what the best thing to do is at this point, but we'll sneak up on it, and hopefully by the end of today we'll have this whole thing apart. We'll see how we get on. Okay, this is an important safety message. For this next scene that you're about to see, where I try and break the ball joint on the lower control arm, I'd really like it if you put a jack underneath the arm. You don't need to put the jack exactly on the arm, but just have it slightly below and set and hard below the actual ball joint and the arm, so that if it does break, it'll hit the jack and not potentially spring out the actual spring into your face, which would be bad. Now the second thing is, it's probably not a good idea to be whacking the castellated nut on top of the ball joint. So what I recommend is, and you can't really see it because there's so much dirt on the lower control arm in this video, that where the caliper is, there's actually a spot there where you can hit the lower control arm, and that generally helps to free up the arm so that it will break from the ball joint. Alrighty, so what I've done now is just taken out the split pin and just loosened off the nut there on top of the ball joint, and I'm going to try and whack it and break it. Probably should put a jack underneath, but the nut should catch it if it breaks, so I'll give this a whack and see what happens. So make sure the nut's sitting proud of the still not going. Might just loosen that off a little bit more if I can. Yep. The problem with the castellated nut is that it sort of isn't very as strong as a normal one. Oops. Watch the body work here. Come on, baby, go. And what I'm worrying about now is that it shouldn't matter. Hang on. Jesus, this guy does not want to pop. That guy does not want to pop. Have a think about this for a minute. Okay, with a lot of bashing, even to the point where I broke this little castle nut. Just took a lot of whacks. I also just loosened off the shocker a little bit, thinking maybe the shocker was stopping the spring or not giving enough tension, but yeah, it took a lot of bashing, mate. Anyway, that is now released, so that means I can get, I don't know where I'll start, maybe the upper control arm first, and then I guess we'll get the spring out and then take out the shocker, and then we can get the arms out and see how we get on. Okay, now I've got a bit of a problem where I couldn't get the shock out, so it just was too fat to fit through that hole. So I thought, oh well, I've seen other people do this, so they basically just drop the arm and the spring and the shock all come out together. Not for me. So that is well and truly under a lot of tension, and I'm going to try and figure out whether I need to jack it back up from underneath. I actually got the jack stuck. It took me ages to get that out. There's a lot of spring actually still up in there. There's a lot of tension, and the shock absorber plunger is kind of trapped in there now against the spring. So I want to think about this as well. Isn't quite going according to plan. Alright, so still a bit stuck here. So what I'm trying to do now is I've had to use this big stick to lever this up, and eventually I was able to get the jack back underneath it, and I'm just jacking it up now. And I guess the only way to do this is to get the shocker out, this guy. So he's pretty much wedged in there. He's got to be able to come out the bottom. I just don't understand why it's so tight in there. It just doesn't, it's really tight fit. So yeah, I'm going to try and spin it a bit, jiggle it a bit, just see if we can get the shocker out, and then drop the whole show again and see if I can then remove the spring somehow. Probably have to lever it out. Even with the control arm as low as it can sort of go, it's right against the ground. That's why you need a hoist, I think. The spring still seems to be under a lot of tension. I'm a bit worried about it. I guess this is where a spring compressor comes in really freaking handy, Tomo. Anywho, we'll just press on and see if we can get this sucker out. Lord knows how I'm going to be able to get it back in. I might have to buy a spring compressor for that job. Alrighty, I've bitten the bullet and I've hit eBay and I've bought an internal spring compressor. Still trying to get this stupid Petter's shock absorber out from the bottom. It just will not come out, and now it's sort of out of alignment up there. So this is turning into a real nightmare. All I've got to do is get the shock out, and then once I've got a spring compressor, I'm sure I can get the rest done, but getting this bastard out is turning into a nightmare today. What I might have to do is figure out how to do it on the other side, try and get that out kind of now, and if I can do it on the other side and figure out how to do it there, then hopefully I can get this out. But yeah, I've lubed it, but it's just too big. So it compresses a little bit. I can kind of get underneath there. I can push it up. I'll spin it. I can spin it around. You can see it spinning there, but I just cannot, for the life of me, figure out how it comes out the bottom. I'm gonna spin it a bit more, and then push it up a little bit, and I get a bit of freedom in there. But yeah, that's really stuck. So I've been kind of lowering and heightening the control arm to try and get a right angle or something. Yeah. Alright, keep trying. Okay, so I've taken off the two side nuts against those bolts, and then I've also undone the two bolts or nuts that hold the whole upper control arm onto those pins, which is that guy. These are a bitch to get off, by the way, the nuts. So you can just see that poking through there, and that whole thing kind of slides back that way. And I've got the shims. I've labelled those, so it's left side right, so they're all together, and then everything, it's really important just to keep everything together. So hopefully this control arm will be out in a jiffy. The only other problem I've got is that what I didn't do, and I should have, was when I was doing the lower control, the ball joint separation there, I should have also taken care of that one at the same time while the whole thing was under load. So I kind of loosened off that nut there and taken out the lock pin, and now I guess I'm just going to have to, well, once the arm's out, then I'll have the whole assembly out, and I'll just have to figure out how to break it. Maybe I'll have to get a prise tool or something to kind of prise it off the spindle there, the ball joint spindle, whatever it's called. Anyway, so this is almost out, and we're sort of making progress, but again, I can't get that out yet, so I'm not going to tackle that tomorrow. Today though, I just want to try and get as much of the suspension sort of taken apart as possible, and then yeah, start cleaning up some parts and things like that, and wire brush a few things. Might even take some things off to get sandblasted, I don't know. And yeah, we'll keep pressing on. Alrighty, so this is going to be interesting. This is actually, I would say, the original upper ball joint on the upper control arm, and those there, that there is a rivet. So I think I'm going to have to figure out how to get them out and drill them out, I suspect. There's nothing, yeah, they're definitely pop riveted in from underneath. There's no nut or screw. So there's a bit of a challenge. Yeah, all right. I'm just in the process of using my cold chisel again to slip that underneath there, and with each rivet just whack them about 50 times. They take a long time to pop just to get the top off, and then I can punch them out with my punch. Alrighty, so I've had a real time of it trying to get the upper control arm bushes out, so I'm probably going to take those to a shop because I've kind of totally ruined one side. I don't want to do too much damage to make it too hard for a professional to do it. There's not a lot on YouTube. There's a couple of guys in the United States that were using cold chisels and stuff like that to get these guys out. Very popular video, but geez, it didn't work for me, that's for sure. It's way too tight in there and probably a bit rusted out. So what I'm doing now is I've managed to get the steering spindle arm off the ball joint. That was pretty straightforward, just bashing it off. What I'm doing now is I'm basically cold chiseling the, where's my cold chisel gone? I've lost it. Just using a cold chisel picked up from Bunnings. Here it is, sorry. Just one of these, really simple little thing. And I basically just whack these really hard, just pop the tops off the rivets. And then I've got another kind of punch arm here, and what I'm doing is I'm basically just popping the rivets straight out, just banging them out once I've got enough off the top. So I'm getting there. It's a long, slow process, but we should get there. I should have, in theory, have this ball joint, upper control arm ball joint out very soon. So we're kind of making progress. Alright, so with a lot of whacking, a lot of persistence, we're able to punch these guys out. So in theory, this guy should just come straight out. And there it is. Look at that. Alright, so we're just got to punch those the rest of the way through, and that shouldn't be too hard. And we should end up with bits of something. It's hopefully off the ball joint. Yeah, we'll just get rid of those, and then we should be ready to take these down to the shop. I'll get the other side off a bit later, and then take them down to the shop and get them to remove those upper control arms, and then I can kind of start to tidy up and paint everything. And I've got my wire brush out here and getting everything sort of sorted out. But far out, if anybody knows how to get upper control arm bush off without tools and without a torch and burning them out or whatever, let me know. Okay, so the front left-hand side suspension is now all out. Went quite smoothly actually, this one. So the lower control arm bolts were pretty easy to remove, a little bit seized up over the years. The best bit today was being able to get the spring out and the shock out. So the shock was really just a matter of using a bit of muscle, grabbing a pair of multi-grips and just freaking yanking it out. So that came out. And then this spring, basically I watched a guy on YouTube, I think he was from New Zealand. He was working on a 1972 HQ Kingser. He was using ratchet straps to kind of work as a, I don't know, like a, what do you call it? Spring compressor, I suppose. So I had one ratchet strap that was holding it in from the other side. You can see it on the ground there. So it was just hooked up around a caliper on the other side. And then I had another ratchet strap which basically just went around from here and then over the top here and then down to the other side of the spring. So the two hooks and then the ratchet. And I was just ratcheting it up here, and that kind of lifted it up enough, and then I just grabbed my multi-grips and just grabbed the base of the spring and just popped it really easy, and then just loosened everything off, and out comes the spring. So here's the lower control arm, so that's all out. yeah, the bushes are pretty stuffed on there, so I'm going to press those out today with my new bush pressing kit, and hopefully I can get the ball joints out too. We'll take off that bump stop and we'll give everything a bit of a clean. So at the moment, this is the mess that I've made of the upper control arm bush. That one again is left alone. And I've just been sort of tidying things up with a wire brush and stuff, and just starting to get some degreaser on there, you know, just clean up their parts, and basically just sort of slowly getting everything cleaned up and ready to paint. I've got some paint over there in the corner there, spanners. Things are getting messy. Alright, after a few minutes I was able to get the lower control arm bush out, just using my little press kit. I'll try and set it up just to show you how I did it, but just a little bit of spray on that just to lube it up a bit. This one looks a bit easier than that one actually. It looked really rusty, and then I was worried it was going to be kind of welded in, but it seems like it's in pretty good shape. So I should be able to get this other one out pretty quickly, and I'll show you the setup in a second. Okay, so I've kind of got it all rigged up. It only takes a couple of seconds. So what I've got here, this is actually a 3/4, 22 mil, sorry, 22 mil. So that sits on there, or if that doesn't work, which it didn't the first time with the other one, I went to a breaker bar, and then I was ready and armed with the Big Daddy, the torque wrench, which is a really good breaker bar as well. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just pop this guy hopefully, and then we can do the ball joints next. Okay, so I've just spent about an hour or so just giving these guys a little bit of a clean up. So they're looking a lot better than what they did, so I just had a wire brush on the end of the drill, but of course the drill ran out of battery, so I've kind of stopped and thought I'd just quickly do it up. But they're doing pretty well, and once these are painted, they look pretty good. Just going to rust treat them a little bit, try and get rid of some of that surface rust. Still got a bit more work to do. That guy, still got a lot of rust in there. And then of course getting these guys out, these arms, whatever they're called. Anyway, so they're all out, ball joints are out, so it's actually been a pretty good day. Suspension's completely taken apart. Steering obviously, and then the other side still to be done, but you know, just do a few hours every day, and a couple of months or so we'll get it done. Okay, so today I started work on the other side. So far it's gone pretty smoothly, so you know what, I released the two ball joints. This time I did both at the same time. Just had a jack under it there, you can see that, and you know, spindle, everything else came off nicely. Real messy. Try not to make the same mistake I made the other day, which was to leave the shock absorber in when I kind of cracked them off the spindle here, the steering arm, whatever it's called. So what I'm trying to do now is to try and wrestle this shocker out, and it does not want to come out. They're just too big. Petters, what were you thinking? Alright, after a lot of swearing, a lot of cursing, and about 10 minutes of wrestling and levering, it is out, and hopefully slightly more damage. You can kind of see it at the top when it's flared at the bottom. So anyway, now we can start to get the spindle off and the control arms, and hopefully we'll have this whole lot out pretty soon. I'm going to try and show you how I set up the spring removal as well. So that went very successfully, so that part is out. And now I'm going to tackle the top control arm, and then see if we can get the spring and everything out from the bottom, going much more smoothly today. Okay, so getting the upper control arm off on this side is a little bit more tricky. So there's not a lot of room because you've got a steering column, you've got the braking system there. Yeah, it's all happening, and plus a power steering unit, and everything's really tight, but just with a bit of patience and perseverance you will get it out. Keep going. Alright, this is turning into another nightmare over here because, I don't know if you can see, I've had to take the brake system off the bracket, but if you look down there, this upper control arm will not come off because it's wedged between the steering column. It's not working for me at all, is it? So that's the steering column there, and that's the upper control arm. And there's just way too much of it to come off. It just keeps banging into the steering column. So I'm going to have to release the steering column, I assume, down the bottom there. You can see that there. I'll try and focus. And decouple from the steering box. And hopefully that swings it out of the way so I can get the upper control arm off.
Okay, for this next scene, please don't use ratchets as spring compressors, particularly really cheap ones that you bought from a local hardware store. I strongly recommend to buy a spring compressor. The one that I've bought is actually from Kogan. It's the same that Barnsey uses from Barnsey's Builds, a famous YouTube channel. So I'm actually still waiting on that to arrive, so when I reinstall everything, it'll all go back in place. But yeah, ratchet straps are probably not the best way to take the load off a spring.
Okay, so I was able to get the upper control arm off no problem in the end. It's just a matter of unscrewing those bolts and just coming at it from the other side and just giving a bit of a yank with a set of multi-grips, and they pop out pretty easily. So that then freed everything up to get the arm out. So the next bit is, this is sort of a contraption that I've created with some ratchet straps over the back. So I've got two. I've got one that's holding it so it doesn't pop out and hit me in the face, and then I've got one sitting over the top to sort of act as a spring compressor. Just taking a bit of a load at the moment just to make sure that the straps are up to it. I think that should be alright. Famous last words. And then I'm just going to continue to lower the jack, and then we'll see if we can force the spring out. Okay, so the system works. So I've got all of those on there, so most of the tension's been taken by these. There's a lot of tension in there. And then what I was able to do, once it was all the way down, the jack out of the way, I was able to basically just get in and just lever it up with the jack handle to sort of slowly release it. Tricky bit now is to undo the ratchets, and hope that everything goes alright with that. I was able to get the lower control arm out. The problem I have now is that I actually don't have enough room for the ratchet to work this time. I don't know why, but I can't. The spring's basically just hanging off the ratchets there. So my plan at this stage is to release that, maybe unhook it from there, is to jack up the spring a little higher, hopefully enough, about an inch or so, 20 centimetres, 20 mil, to get it over and loosen off that ratchet strap, and then we can take the spring out, all going well. Okay, so that's worked. Now this spring is under a huge amount of pressure, so I'm just going to gently let him down and hope that other ratchet strap catches as if it decides to go a bit haywire. Success! It is out and loose. So you can see that, that's all loose, and there's no tension on that anymore. I do not recommend this. Definitely grab yourself a spring compressor. I've got one on the way for during the installation, so I'll do it properly next time. Taking these bolts off now, just off the ends of the arm there. So the way I'm doing that is just to get a screwdriver through the hole and grab it. A ratchet, spanner, or an impact drill, whatever. 5/18. Blast them off, just like that. And it doesn't want to play. Alright, so I've got a little bit of work to do on that, just to get him off at the end there. Okay, so I've kind of got it all rigged up. It only takes a couple of seconds. So what I've got here, this is actually a 3/4, 22 mil, sorry, 22 mil. So that sits on there. Or if that doesn't work, which it didn't the first time with the other one, I went to a breaker bar, and then I was ready and armed with the Big Daddy, the torque wrench, which is a really good breaker bar as well. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just pop this guy hopefully, and then we can do the ball joints next. Alright, after a few minutes I was able to get the lower control arm bush out, just using my little press kit. I'll try and set it up just to show you how I did it, but just a little bit of spray on that just to lube it up a bit. This one looks a bit easier than that one actually. It looked really rusty, and then I was worried it was going to be kind of welded in, but it seems like it's in pretty good shape. So I should be able to get this other one out pretty quickly, and I'll show you the setup in a second. Alright, so this is the rig to catch the bottom of the ball joint at the bottom of the control arm. And then we're just sort of pushing through with this plate. It's kind of squishing up all the rubbers and making all the grease come out, but it is coming out. So with this breaker bar here, we should be able to have it out in a few seconds. Okay, so that has just popped out bottom there. We should be in theory be able to push that out. There it goes. So that's the lower control, lower ball joint. And look how rusty that is in there. So we've got quite a lot of work to do to clean up this arm next. Take that bump stock off and get everything off. Now I've got the two upper control arms off. I can take them down to the mechanic and get them to remove the bushes and hopefully I'll get them to install them as well, I reckon. And then go through that palaver. Yeah, grippo.